The massive space station Nexus Prime hummed with activity as beings from across the galaxy gathered for the annual Galactic Combat Exhibition. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the gleaming corridors, their varied forms creating a spectacular display of evolution's creativity. Four-armed Zenturi merchants haggled with crystalline Vexi traders, while the towering Gorth warriors stood in disciplined formations near the combat arenas. In the central plaza, a crowd had gathered around what appeared to be an unremarkable human sitting quietly on a bench. The human wore simple gray clothing that seemed almost primitive compared to the advanced materials and energy shields favored by other species. His name was Marcus Chun, a maintenance engineer from Earth's outer colonies, and he had only come to Nexus Prime to repair some atmosphere processors. He never intended to become the center of attention. The crowd wasn't looking at Marcus directly. Instead, they were watching Korthak the Destroyer, a 7-foot-tall Draknari warrior whose reputation preceded him throughout the galaxy. Korthak's scaled hide bore the ritual scars of 1,000 victories, and his forearms each ended in claws capable of rending steel. The Draknari were known as the galaxy's premier warriors, their entire culture built around combat excellence and honor through battle. Korthak had been issuing challenges to various species representatives for the past hour, easily defeating each opponent in single combat. The rules were simple traditional Draknari dueling, where opponents fought until one yielded or could no longer continue. No weapons, no armor, just raw skill and strength. The Draknari warrior had already humiliated a Zentari champion, crushed a Gorth veteran, and sent 3 other species' finest warriors to the medical bay. Where are the true warriors? Korthak roared, his voice echoing through the plaza. Surely someone in this gathering of weaklings can provide proper entertainment? The assembled crowd murmured nervously. Most species had already declined to face the Draknari champion, knowing their representatives would only face defeat and dishonor. The Draknari had evolved on a world where survival meant constant warfare against predators that made nightmares seem tame. Their physical capabilities were legendary, their combat techniques refined over millennia. Marcus continued working on his datapad, reviewing technical specifications for the atmosphere processors. He had 14 more units to service before his contract was complete, and the sooner he finished, the sooner he could return to the quiet research station where he actually worked. The commotion around the warrior barely registered in his consciousness. "You there, human!" Korthak's voice boomed suddenly. "Yes, you on the bench. Do your people have no pride? No honor? Will you sit there like a coward while I call for worthy opponents?" Marcus looked up from his datapad, blinking in confusion. "I'm sorry, were you talking to me? I'm just here to fix some equipment. I'm not really involved in all this." The crowd gasped at what they perceived as incredible rudeness. Among warrior cultures, declining a challenge from a proven champion was considered deeply insulting. The Draknari especially viewed such refusal as cowardice of the highest order. Korthak's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "A human refuses my challenge? Your species claims to be expanding across the stars, yet you cower when faced with true strength." "I'm not cowering," Marcus replied reasonably, still not fully grasping the situation. "I just don't really fight people. It's not my thing. I fix machines and maintain life support systems. That's what I do." Several alien spectators began making sounds that roughly translated to expressions of disgust and contempt. In their cultures, a warrior's challenge was sacred, something that demanded either acceptance or formal, respectful decline with proper justification. The Draknari warrior's scales began shifting to deeper shades of red, indicating rising anger. "Then, you admit your species is weak? That humans are inferior beings who hide behind their technology rather than face combat with honor." Something in that statement made Marcus pause. He had always been proud of humanity's achievements, their ability to solve problems through ingenuity and cooperation rather than brute force. The suggestion that this made them inferior struck him as fundamentally wrong. "We're not weak," Marcus said quietly, setting down his datapad. "We just don't usually settle things by hitting each other. We tend to think our way through problems instead. Thinking," Korthak spat, "is for prey animals. Predators act. Warriors prove themselves through strength and skill in battle. If you will not defend your species' honor, then Let the galaxy know that humans are nothing but clever cattle. The crowd was growing larger now, word spreading through the station that a human was being challenged by the famous Draknari champion. Representatives from dozens of species pressed closer, eager to witness what they expected to be either a humiliating human defeat or an embarrassing refusal. Marcus stood up slowly, his mind working through the implications. He understood now that this wasn't just about personal combat. This warrior was making a statement about humanity's place in the galactic community. If word spread that humans were cowards who refused honorable challenges, it could affect trade relationships, diplomatic standings, and humanity's reputation among the stars. "All right," Marcus said finally. "I'll accept your challenge. But I should probably warn you that I've never done anything like this before." Korthak's laugh was like grinding stone. "Your honesty will not save you from humiliation, human. Perhaps when you wake up in the medical center, you will understand why the Draknari are respected throughout the galaxy." The crowd quickly formed a circle around the makeshift arena. Station security arrived, but took positions to observe rather than interfere, recognizing that this was now an official challenge under galactic combat protocols. Medical teams moved into position, expecting to treat severe injuries shortly. Marcus looked around at the expectant faces surrounding them. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy watched with anticipation, most clearly expecting to witness humanity's embarrassment at the hands of a superior warrior species. The weight of representation fell heavily on his shoulders. Korthak began stretching his four massive arms, each one corded with muscle developed through decades of constant training. His claws extended and retracted in practiced motions, and his stance shifted to the traditional Draknari combat position that had dominated battlefields for generations. Marcus just stood there, looking somewhat awkward and uncertain. He had no combat training, no understanding of proper fighting stances or techniques. His only physical conditioning came from the manual labor required in his maintenance work, and even that was assisted by modern tools and equipment. "Are you ready to begin, human?" Korthak asked, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never lost a formal duel. Marcus nodded, though he honestly had no idea what he was supposed to be ready for. "I guess so. Do we just start when someone says go? Or is there some kind of ceremony?" The simplicity of the question caused several aliens in the crowd to exchange glances. Most warrior cultures had elaborate rituals surrounding formal combat, ceremonies that honored the spirits of past fighters and invoked blessings for honorable victory. "We begin when I choose to begin," Korthak replied, and, without further warning, he launched himself forward with the speed and power that had made his people legendary across the galaxy. Korthak's attack came like a natural disaster, for arms moving in perfect coordination as he closed the distance to Marcus in milliseconds. The Draknari fighting style was brutal and efficient, developed through countless generations of warfare, where hesitation meant death. His claws swept toward Marcus in a pattern designed to overwhelm any defense, each strike capable of ending the fight instantly. Marcus did something that no trained warrior would have done. Instead of trying to block or dodge in any conventional manner, he simply stepped sideways and slightly backward, moving just enough to let Korthak's momentum carry him past. It wasn't a calculated defensive maneuver. It was pure instinct, the same kind of spatial awareness that kept maintenance workers from walking into spinning machinery. The crowd gasped as Korthak stumbled slightly, his perfectly planned attack hitting nothing but air. The Draknari warrior spun around, confusion and irritation flickering across his scaled features. In hundreds of duels, no opponent had ever simply stepped out of the way so casually. "Hold still and fight properly," Korthak growled, launching another series of attacks. Marcus continued moving in that same unhurried way, shifting his position just enough to avoid the incoming strikes. To the watching aliens, it looked like he was barely trying, as if the devastating attacks of a legendary Draknari warrior were nothing more than minor inconveniences to step around. What the crowd couldn't see was the intense calculation happening in Marcus's mind. His profession required him to visualize complex, three-dimensional problems, to understand how systems moved and interacted in space. Korthak was simply another system to analyze, his movement patterns becoming clear after the first few exchanges. "This human fights like no warrior I have seen," whispered a Gorith observer to his companion. Where's his technique? His form? His battle stance? The truth was that Marcus had no fighting technique at all. What he had was pattern recognition developed through years of troubleshooting mechanical systems, spatial reasoning honed by working in cramped maintenance shafts, and the calm problem-solving mindset that kept critical life support systems running. Korthak's attacks became more aggressive, his forearms weaving complex patterns that should have been impossible to avoid. The Draknari style was built on the principle of overwhelming opponents through superior numbers of simultaneous attacks. No being with only 2 arms should have been able to keep up with a properly trained 4-armed warrior. Yet Marcus continued moving in that same relaxed manner, reading Korthak's movements and adjusting his position accordingly. He wasn't fighting so much as troubleshooting, treating the challenge like a particularly aggressive mechanical problem that needed to be worked around rather than confronted directly. Why won't you attack? Korthak roared in frustration after another series of missed strikes. Are you so cowardly that you will only run? I'm not running, Marcus replied, sounding slightly puzzled. I'm just trying not to get hit. Isn't that the point? If I don't get hit and you get tired, then I win, right? The simple logic of the statement sent murmurs through the crowd. Many warrior cultures emphasized aggressive offense and honorable defense, but the human was approaching the duel like an engineering problem with a purely practical solution. Korthak paused, breathing heavily from his sustained assault. The Draknari were physically powerful, but their combat style was designed for quick, decisive victories. Extended fights were unusual in their culture because most opponents either fell quickly or yielded before reaching exhaustion. You cannot win by running forever, human. Eventually you will tire, and then I will tear you apart. Marcus considered this statement with the same methodical approach he applied to technical problems. Actually, I probably won't get tired as fast as you might think. I spend most of my time crawling around inside ships and stations, fixing things in uncomfortable positions. It's pretty good cardio, and you're doing most of the work here. The casual way he discussed the mechanics of their duel was unlike anything the watching aliens had experienced. Most warriors spoke in terms of honor, glory, and ancestral pride during combat. The human was treating it like a maintenance procedure. Korthak resumed his attack with renewed fury, but something was different now. His movements were slightly less precise, his breathing heavier. The sustained offensive was taking its toll, and everyone watching could see it. Marcus, meanwhile, looked like he could continue dodging indefinitely. His movements remained economical and efficient, never wasting energy on unnecessary motions. He had unconsciously applied the fundamental maintenance principle of working smarter, not harder. This is impossible, muttered a Zentari observer. The human has no training, no warrior's instincts. How does he continue to evade a Draknari champion? The answer was becoming clear to those aliens with more analytical minds. The human wasn't fighting like a warrior at all. He was solving a problem, and the problem was simply to avoid being in the same space as Korthak's claws. Everything else was irrelevant detail. As the duel continued, more and more aliens began arriving to witness the impossible sight. Word spread through Nexus Prime that a maintenance worker was somehow holding his own against one of the galaxy's most feared warriors. Viewing screens throughout the station began broadcasting the encounter as news networks picked up the story. Korthak was becoming visibly frustrated, his attacks growing wilder and less controlled. The precise Draknari technique was giving way to brute force as exhaustion and anger clouded his judgment. Every missed strike made him angrier, and every display of anger made his next attack more predictable. Marcus noticed the pattern developing and began to understand the psychological dimension of what was happening. Korthak wasn't just getting tired, he was getting emotional, and emotional opponents made mistakes. You're getting pretty worked up about this, Marcus observed during a brief pause in the action. Maybe we should take a break? You look like you could use some water. The suggestion that a legendary Draknari warrior needed rest during a duel with an untrained human sent waves of shock through the crowd. Such an offer was unprecedented in recorded galactic combat history. Korthak's response was predictable. His scales flushed dark red with rage, and he launched into the most aggressive assault yet, abandoning all defensive considerations in favor of overwhelming offense. It was exactly what Marcus had expected him to do. Korthak's final assault was a thing of terrible beauty, forearms moving in perfect synchronization as he threw everything into one overwhelming attack. Every technique learned over decades of training. Every instinct honed through countless victories, focused into a strike pattern that should have been absolutely impossible to avoid. The Draknari warrior had abandoned all defense, committing completely to ending the duel with pure offensive fury. Marcus watched the attack develop with the same analytical mindset he brought to complex system failures. The pattern was more elaborate than before, but it was still a pattern, and patterns could be understood. More importantly, Korthak's complete commitment to offense meant he had left himself entirely open to counterattack. For the first time in the duel, Marcus didn't just dodge. As Korthak's momentum carried him forward in his all-out assault, Marcus did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He stepped forward instead of back, moving inside the arc of the attack where the forearms couldn't effectively reach him. The maneuver was pure instinct, born from years of working in tight spaces where sometimes the safest place was closer to the dangerous machinery rather than farther away. Marcus found himself face-to-face with the Draknari warrior, close enough to see the shock in Korthak's 4 eyes as his perfect attack found nothing but empty air. What happened next would be debated in combat academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Marcus, operating on pure maintenance worker instincts, did what he would do when faced with any malfunctioning piece of equipment that needed to be safely shut down. He reached out and found a critical system component. In the case of Korthak, that component turned out to be a complex bundle of nerve clusters located at the base of the Draknari's neck, with a forearm anatomy required additional neural pathways to coordinate movement. Marcus had no idea such a vulnerability existed. He was simply reaching for what looked like a good handhold to steady himself. His fingers pressed into the nerve cluster with the same firm, steady pressure he used when making delicate adjustments to sensitive equipment. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Korthak's forearms suddenly lost all coordination, his legs buckled, and the massive warrior collapsed to the deck of the space station like a deactivated robot. The plaza fell into absolute silence. Hundreds of aliens stared in disbelief at the scene before them. Korthak, the destroyer, undefeated champion of the Draknari people, lay unconscious on the deck. Standing over him was a human maintenance worker who looked almost as surprised as everyone else. "Oh," Marcus said quietly, looking down at his hand. "I didn't know that would happen. Is he okay?" Medical teams rushed forward to check on Korthak, their scanners confirming what everyone could see. The Draknari warrior was unconscious but uninjured, his vital signs stable. The nerve cluster pressure had simply caused a temporary shutdown of his motor functions, like hitting a reset button on a complex piece of machinery. "Ow," whispered a Vexhai observer, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated extreme confusion. How does a maintenance worker defeat a Draknari champion? Marcus knelt beside Korthak, his professional instincts taking over. "I think I just found a pressure point or something. In my job, you learn that every system has specific spots where a little pressure in the right place can shut everything down safely. I guess biological systems work the same way." The explanation rippled through the crowd as translators converted his words into hundreds of different languages. The concept was so simple, so obvious in hindsight, that it was revolutionary. The human had treated the Draknari warrior like a piece of equipment to be diagnosed and safely deactivated. Dr. Valen, a prominent Zentari medical researcher who had been observing the duel, pushed through the crowd to examine both combatants. Her 4 hands moved quickly over scanners and diagnostic equipment as she studied what had occurred. "Fascinating," she murmured. The human somehow identified and activated a neural shutdown point that our medical texts describe but consider impossible to access during combat. The precision required, the exact pressure and angle should take years of anatomical study to master. "I just pushed where it looked like things connected," Marcus explained, still kneeling beside the unconscious warrior. When you work on complex systems, you develop an eye for critical junctions. Everything has them. News networks across the galaxy were now broadcasting live coverage of the aftermath. The impossible duel was being analyzed by experts, military tacticians, and xenobiologists as they tried to understand exactly what had happened on Nexus Prime. Korthak began to stir, his forearms twitching as motor function returned. Marcus immediately backed away, giving the warrior space to recover while keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. The Draknari champion sat up slowly, confusion clear in his four eyes. What happened? Why am I on the deck? You kind of collapsed, Marcus explained gently. I think I accidentally hit a nerve cluster or something. Are you feeling okay? Do you need me to call medical personnel? The genuine concern in the human's voice was unmistakable. There was no triumph, no gloating over victory. Marcus was treating Korthak exactly like he would treat any colleague who had been injured on the job. Korthak looked around at the watching crowd, then back at Marcus. Slowly, the reality of what had occurred began to sink in. He had been defeated, not through superior combat skill or overwhelming strength, but through a technique so simple and practical that it had never occurred to anyone to use it. The duel, Korthak said slowly. You won. I guess, Marcus replied, still looking concerned about the warrior's condition. But I didn't really mean to win. I was just trying not to get hurt, and then you fell down. Are you sure you're okay? The humility was genuine, and it made the victory even more remarkable. Marcus had achieved something unprecedented in galactic combat history, and he was worried about his opponent's well-being rather than celebrating his triumph. Standing officials from various species began approaching the impromptu arena. Word of the duel's outcome was spreading beyond Nexus Prime, reaching diplomatic channels and military headquarters across the galaxy. A single human had accomplished something that was reshaping everyone's understanding of combat, biological systems, and the nature of strength itself. Human, Korthak said finally, struggling to his feet with as much dignity as he could manage. What is your name? Marcus Chun. I'm a maintenance engineer from the outer colonies. Marcus Chun, Korthak repeated slowly, as if testing how the alien syllables felt in his mouth. You have defeated me in honorable combat. By the laws of my people, I must acknowledge your victory and the superiority of your technique. The formal declaration sent another wave of shock through the assembled crowd. A Draknari warrior was publicly acknowledging defeat at the hands of a human maintenance worker who had never been trained for combat. The aftermath of the duel spread through the galactic community like ripples from a dropped stone. Within hours, footage of Marcus Chin's impossible victory was being analyzed in military academies, research facilities, and diplomatic chambers across hundreds of worlds. The human maintenance worker had accomplished something that challenged fundamental assumptions about combat, strength, and the nature of warfare itself. Marcus, meanwhile, was trying to return to his original mission of fixing atmosphere processors. He sat in a maintenance bay aboard Nexus Prime, surrounded by technical manuals and diagnostic equipment, when a delegation of high-ranking officials found him. Leading the group was Ambassador Thylex, a distinguished Zentari diplomat whose four arms were adorned with the ceremonial ribbons of her office. Behind her stood representatives from a dozen major species, including General Vorthak of the Draknari Military Command and Dr. Kepler, a human ambassador who had arrived on the fastest available transport. Mr. Chun, Ambassador Thylex began, her voice carrying the weight of formal protocol. Your actions today have created significant repercussions throughout the galactic community. We need to discuss the implications. Marcus looked up from the atmosphere processor he was rebuilding, a confused expression on his face. Implications? I just accepted a challenge, and things got weird. I still have 12 more units to service before my contract expires. Dr. Kepler stepped forward, her expression mixing pride and concern. Marcus, what you did out there has changed how every species in the galaxy views human capabilities. Combat experts are calling it revolutionary. Military strategists are demanding access to human training methods that produced your technique. What technique? Marcus asked genuinely. I just try not to get hit, and when that wasn't working anymore, I found a way to turn him off safely. It's basic troubleshooting. General Vorthak, a massive Draknari whose scales bore the scars of countless battles, spoke in heavily accented standard. Human Shun, your basic troubleshooting has revealed weaknesses in Draknari physiology that our own warriors never discovered. My people have been studying combat for millennia, yet you found a vulnerability we missed. Every system has shut down points, Marcus replied, as if explaining something obvious. You just have to know where to look. Biological systems aren't really different from mechanical ones in that respect. The simplicity of a statement made several delegates exchange glances. Ambassador Thylex activated a holographic display showing combat statistics from across the galaxy. Mr. Chun, military analysts have been reviewing the footage of your duel. They've identified 17 separate instances where you avoided attacks that should have been impossible to dodge. No known combat training produces such results. Marcus studied the holographic replay of his encounter with Korthak. That's just spatial reasoning. When you work inside starship systems, you develop a sense for how things move in three-dimensional space. You have to, or you'll get crushed by machinery. But humans are not typically known for superior spatial reasoning, observed Dr. Yithek, a Vexi scientist whose crystalline form pulsed with analytical light. Most species regard you as intelligent, but physically unremarkable. Maybe, Marcus said thoughtfully, but we spend a lot of time working with our hands, fixing things, building things. Other species might have better claws or stronger muscles, but we've gotten really good at understanding how complex systems work. General Vorthak leaned forward, his four eyes intense with interest. Are you saying that all humans possess these capabilities? Marcus considered the question seriously. I don't know about everyone, but most maintenance workers, engineers, and technicians develop similar skills. You have to understand systems, predict how they'll behave, find solutions when things go wrong. It's just part of the job. The implications hit the assembled delegates simultaneously. If Marcus's abilities were representative of human technical workers rather than unique to him personally, then humanity possessed a vast population with capabilities that had been completely overlooked by galactic military and diplomatic assessments. Ambassador Thylex's four hands moved rapidly across her diplomatic communication device. Mr. Chun, would you be willing to demonstrate your techniques to our combat specialists? The Galactic Defense Council is very interested in understanding human capabilities. I don't really have techniques, Marcus protested. I just solve problems. But I guess if it would help with diplomatic relations or something, I could try to explain what I do. Dr. Kepler stepped closer, lowering her voice. Marcus, you need to understand what's happening here. Every military in the galaxy is now reassessing human potential. Some species are concerned about what other capabilities humans might possess that haven't been recognized yet. The larger implications were beginning to dawn on Marcus. His simple approach to a combat challenge had inadvertently revealed that humans might possess significant abilities that have been overlooked or underestimated by the galactic community. Are you saying people are worried about humans because I accidentally want to fight? He asked. Not worried exactly, Ambassador Thylex replied diplomatically, but certainly interested in understanding the full scope of human capabilities. Your victory suggests that human problem-solving approaches may be more applicable to physical challenges than previously thought. Marcus set down his diagnostic tools and looked around at the assembled delegates. Representatives from species known for their strength, intelligence, and military prowess were asking him to explain abilities he had never considered special or unusual. What do you want me to do? He asked finally. General Vorthak spoke first. The Draknari High Command would be honored if you would visit our training facilities. Our warriors could learn much from human approaches to combat analysis. The Zentari Science Council would like to study human spatial reasoning capabilities, added Dr. Yithek. The Gorth Military Academy has requested permission to observe human maintenance workers in action, said another delegate. Marcus looked overwhelmed by the sudden attention. I just fix machines. I'm not a diplomat or a military expert or anything like that. I just wanted to complete my maintenance contract and go home. Dr. Kepler smiled. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from people who are just trying to do their jobs well. What you've shown the galaxy today is that human approaches to problem solving might be more valuable than anyone realized. But I should probably finish fixing the atmosphere processors first, Marcus said practically. People need to breathe. The simple statement, prioritizing essential maintenance over galactic politics, perfectly captured the human approach that had impressed the delegates so much. While other species might have immediately leveraged such an opportunity for political gain, the human was concerned about completing his assigned work. Ambassador Thylex made a decision. Mr. Chun, the Galactic Council will arrange for additional technicians to complete your maintenance contract. Your skills appear to be needed for more significant challenges. As word continued to spread throughout the galaxy, military strategists, and diplomatic corps began reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. The species they had regarded as clever, but physically unremarkable, had produced a maintenance worker who could defeat legendary warriors through simple, practical problem-solving. The duel on Nexus Prime had started as a challenge to human courage. It was ending as a revelation about human potential that would reshape galactic relationships for generations to come. 6 months after the duel that had changed everything, Marcus Chin found himself in a situation he never could have imagined. The simple maintenance worker was now standing before the Galactic Council Assembly, the most powerful governing body in known space, addressing representatives from over 300 species about human integration into galactic society. The transformation hadn't been easy. What started as requests for demonstrations had evolved into formal diplomatic negotiations as the galaxy struggled to understand the implications of human capabilities. Marcus had become an unwitting ambassador for his species, trying to explain concepts that seemed obvious to him, but revolutionary to everyone else. The key thing to understand, Marcus was saying to the assembled delegates, is that we don't think of ourselves as warriors or strategists. We're just really good at figuring out how things work and fixing them when they break. In the months following his victory over Korthak, human maintenance workers, engineers, and technicians across the galaxy had found themselves suddenly in high demand. Species that had previously overlooked human technical personnel were now actively recruiting them, eager to understand the practical problem-solving approaches that had proved so effective. The results had been remarkable. Human engineers were revolutionizing starship design by applying biological system analysis to mechanical problems. Maintenance workers were identifying critical vulnerabilities in defense systems that military experts had missed for centuries. Even human farmers were being consulted about agricultural challenges on alien worlds. General Vorthak rose from his position in the Draknari delegation section. Human Shun, my people have spent the last 6 months training with your technicians. Our combat effectiveness has improved by 40% simply by adopting human analytical approaches to battlefield problems. We just showed them how to think about enemy movements like system diagnostics, Marcus replied. Same principles apply whether you're troubleshooting a life support failure or predicting where an opponent will attack next. Ambassador Thylex activated a holographic display showing statistics from across the galaxy. The integration of human technical personnel into existing infrastructures has produced unprecedented improvements in efficiency across multiple sectors. Agricultural yields are up. Mechanical failure rates are down. Even our diplomatic negotiations have become more effective when human mediators apply their problem-solving methods to political disputes. Marcus looked at the data with the same analytical mindset he brought to everything else. It makes sense. Most problems have similar underlying structures, whether they're mechanical, biological, or social. Once you learn to recognize patterns and critical failure points, you can apply the same approaches across different systems. Dr. Yithek's crystalline form pulsed with excited patterns. Our research has confirmed that human brains develop unique neural pathways through hands-on technical work. The combination of spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and practical problem-solving creates cognitive capabilities that complement existing galactic skill sets perfectly. What had surprised everyone, including the humans themselves, was how readily human technical approaches adapted to alien technologies and biological systems. Human maintenance workers were successfully troubleshooting Vex-high crystalline computers, Gorath biomechanical hybrid systems, and even Draknari warrior enhancement procedures. The question before us now, announced Chancellor Morpheus, the ancient leader of the Galactic Council, is how to formally recognize humanity's contribution to galactic civilization. Never before has a single species so fundamentally altered our understanding of problem-solving and system analysis. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his formal diplomatic attire. He still preferred his simple maintenance coveralls, but Dr. Kepler had insisted that addressing the Galactic Council required appropriate dress. We don't need special recognition. We're happy to help solve problems. That's what we do. The humble response had become typical of human representatives throughout the galaxy. While other species might have leveraged such success for political advantage or territorial gain, humans consistently focused on practical cooperation and mutual benefit. Korthak himself had become an unexpected advocate for human integration. The former Draknari champion now served as a liaison between human technical teams and warrior cultures, helping to translate human analytical approaches into concepts that combat-focused species could understand and apply. The humans have taught us that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to understand and repair, Korthak declared from his position in the assembly. Their victory over me was not defeat, but education. The formal proceedings continued for hours as delegates debated the specifics of expanded human integration into galactic society. Trade agreements were restructured to account for human technical capabilities. Educational exchange programs were established. Research partnerships were formalized between human institutions and alien academies. Through it all, Marcus found himself thinking about the atmosphere of processors he had been originally sent to repair. The irony wasn't lost on him that his simple desire to complete a maintenance contract had somehow led to fundamental changes in galactic civilization. Mr. Chun, Chancellor Morpheus said as the session drew to a close, "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to thank you for your contributions to our understanding of human capabilities. Your actions have opened new possibilities for cooperation and mutual advancement across all species." Marcus nodded politely. "I'm glad it worked out well for everyone. But if it's all the same to you, I'd like to get back to fixing things now. There are always systems that need maintenance somewhere." The laughter that rippled through the assembly was warm and genuine. The human response was so perfectly characteristic of the species that had surprised them all. Even after becoming the most famous maintenance worker in galactic history, Marcus Chun was still primarily concerned with doing his job well. As the formal session ended and delegates began filing out, Marcus was approached by a young Zentari engineer who had been observing the proceedings. "Human Chun," she said, her four hands moving in a gesture of respectful inquiry, "would you be willing to teach me about diagnostic pattern recognition? My people would benefit greatly from human technical approaches." Marcus smiled, the first completely relaxed expression he had worn all day. "Sure. Teaching is just another kind of problem solving. When do you want to start?" And so the galaxy continued to change, one fixed system at a time, guided by a species that had never set out to be teachers or leaders or warriors. Humans had simply wanted to help, to solve problems, and to make things work better than they had before. In the end, that had proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed. The maintenance worker who had accidentally won a duel had shown everyone that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't strength or intelligence or technology. It was the simple, practical wisdom of people who understood that everything worked better when someone cared enough to fix it properly. Marcus Chun returned to his workshop that evening, picked up his tools, and went back to work. There were always more systems that needed attention, more problems to solve, more ways to make the galaxy run a little bit better. And across hundreds of worlds, human technicians, engineers, and maintenance workers continued doing what they had always done, one careful repair at a time.